Hello, and welcome back to another NFL quick sub 10-minute season recap video. I hope all of you are doing well. I'm doing well, and we are here to talk about a team that I'm very high on. Well, not that I'm very high on. We're talking about the Panthers here. It's not that I'm high on them and that I think they're going to do very well or anything next year, but the energy has clearly shifted in Carolina. And I don't think there's been this much excitement and happiness around that franchise in who knows how long. So I want to quickly start this off with an insult. I would like to point and laugh at all of the delusional people who thought the Panthers were going to win 8 or 9 games this season. And listen, there was a point maybe where I was like, you know what, maybe the Panthers could win 6 or 7 games, but eight, nine, possibly winning the division. There were some absolutely delusional people out there, and I want to quickly point out that they could not have been more wrong. So obviously, for the other 95% of people who knew the Panthers had no chance of making the playoffs, we knew this season was all about development and development primarily for Bryce Young, right? This team was a complete dumpster fire for the early parts of the season. It was so bad, in fact, that Bryce even got benched for Andy Dalton. That seems like ancient history. It's so crazy that during the middle part of the season, like it was a complete like the Panthers had no hope. Like not only were they terrible, which some people expected, but they were terrible with no hope moving forward. Like it's like the Browns, it's like the Browns' current situation. It's like not only are you awful, but there's like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So once the Panthers benched Bryce, it was kind of like a all hope is lost type moment. And at that point, it looked like it was all over. And there were a lot. I'm not going to say a large majority, but it felt like it was at least 50-50 at that point of people, especially within the Panthers fan base, who wanted to move on from Bryce Young. I was never one of those guys. I always felt like you have to give Bryce some sort of opportunity here. The weapons he was working with, the team around him, it was just not. I don't even. I'm not talking about Bryce Young leading the Panthers to the playoffs like Jaden Daniels or CJ Stroud. He's way off. Like we're not even in the same stratosphere there. I'm just talking about give this guy enough weapons offensively to even see if he has what it takes. They were not meeting the most basic of requirements. And listen, the offense, to be fair here, the offense did improve in the few games that Dalton started, but obviously it meant like nothing in terms of the overall franchise direction. Like who cares if they won a game or two under Andy Dalton? Now, this may sound a little wild, but Andy Dalton did get into a car crash like a couple weeks after being named the starter. And so the Panthers now are forced to throw Bryce Young back into the fire, and I don't even know if that was planned. Like, I'm not sure if the goal was to just bench Bryce Young and then go into the offseason trying to debate, whether or not they should move on and draft a quarterback. Maybe they always just knew, Bryce is our guy. Let's just give him the rest of the season off because they genuinely just did not have any hope of him turning it around. But here's kind of just a random thing that happened that forced their hand in a way. And they are now, you know, over halfway through the season, I think, forced to move him back into, well, there was 10 games left where they were forced to put him back in there. And I don't know what changed while he was on the bench, but when he came back, he played the best football of his professional career. Do y'all even remember that clip? It was while he was benched. There was somebody like after a Panthers practice, like they took a video of Bryce. He just looked so depressed, man. It was really sad, man. Like it looked like he just had lost all love of the game. But little did we know, he must have been really like a fire was lit under him by that decision to bench him. When he came back, right, those final 10 games, he had 20 total touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Okay, this is an amazing ratio for any quarterback. The team went 4-6, which you might hear that and say 4-6, but it's the Panthers, brother. 4-6 for the Panthers. That is amazing. Um, and they had three of those losses, close losses, to playoff teams. I remember the Chiefs stick out in particular. What other close losses do they have? They played some really good football during that stretch. Was it the Buccaneers as well? It was a close game. I'm not sure, but that 10-game sample size is what the Panthers fans have to focus on. And they had to hope that they build off of that, right? Because that was a real tangible exciting football that they were playing right there. Um, Moving on to the defense, though, they have the worst defense in football. I mean, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. Um, this might have been the worst defense in franchise history, and I already knew this. The nobody could honestly look at this roster, especially the defense, and say, "Oh yeah, the Panthers. That's a playoff team. That's a team that's ready to compete." Nobody even thought, even the delusional people that thought the Panthers could win 8 or 9 games, I think their belief was that Bryce would just take a massive jump forward and this offense would be exciting and explosive. I don't think anybody had any faith in the defense here. And I mean, that kind of makes sense when you look at back at the fact that Derek Brown, who's arguably their best defensive player, got hurt in week one and was out for the entire season. So you're looking at a bad defense, which lost arguably their best player in week one. So it was a disaster class there. Well, here's what excites me about um, rookie head coach Dave Canales: 105 more points scored than the year prior. Just think about that for a second. So I don't think anybody thinks the Panthers offense was really great this season or even good for that matter. But to score 105 more points than the year prior, that is a massive improvement for anybody. That's like what, 6 points per game? That is ridiculous when you really put that into perspective and think of just how bad they were last season. But that's a major um good mark for the impact that he had on that team. Bryce Young, Chuba Hubbard, Xavier Legette looked like they will help carry this offense moving forward. I think they all took strides, especially Chuba Hubbard. I thought he really kind of stood out this year as even when they were not doing really good, like when Bryce was benched and all that, Chuba Hubbard was like a consistently good, positive force for this team. Um, Now let's talk about the offseason, what I think they can do to improve. Obviously, well, first of all, we're talking about a team that's not spending a lot of money currently on like contracts and stuff like that. So I'm trying to think. Obviously, not in the quarterback. Their left tackle, Ikmaquanu, not there. They shouldn't be spending any big money on receivers or running backs. Like this is a team that should have a lot of cap space moving forward. So, in terms of guys who I think they should try and bring back, Adam Thielen, if he is not already on contract, I would like to see them like try and retain Adam Thielen. It seems like Bryce Young has the most confidence in him. And by the way, I can already tell the Panthers' years of Adam Thielen's career are going to be overlooked. I think Adam Thielen as a whole is going to be overlooked, like when he retires and stuff like that. I watched some Panthers games. Adam Thielen can still play. He is still a really, really good receiver. Like I think if he was on a team like the Commanders, he would be a monster on a lot of teams. Just because he's on the Panthers and Bryce's play was shaky, like not a lot of people pay attention to Adam Thielen anymore. But I'm telling you, that guy still, if he wants to play next year, I'm sure he does. He would have announced his retirement if he wasn't. But Adam Thielen, I'm positive is going to be a really good player for the Panthers next year. I would like to see them make a move for a guy like T. Higgins, depending on what their plans are for the draft. Let's talk about the draft first, actually. So the major debate here for me is whether you take a receiver, probably Tedero McMillan, or any defensive player, because I just gave you the argument that they were the worst defense in the NFL, undeniably. So the thought process there is if you're faced with a guy like, let's say, Abdul Carter, I think this is the debate. This is the debate with the Panthers: Abdul Carter or Tedero McMillan. I completely understand the argument that we have the worst defense in the NFL. We have a 0% chance of making the playoffs if we don't, you know, boost that defense dramatically. And drafting a generational talent like Abdul Carter, the only reason I say that is because I don't really think Abdul Carter is all of that he's kind of cracked up to be. But the potential of a guy like that would change the direction of this franchise moving forward. But the problem with that argument, in my opinion, is that they're kind of making the assumption that Bryce Young is the finished product and the offense is ready to go and the offense is playoff caliber. I think the offense, and especially Bryce Young, still has a long ways to go. I like how he finished the season, but I would like to see them draft a guy like Tedero McMillan and continue to invest into the offense and the offensive line and the receivers to just make sure you give Bryce the best possible chance. Because I don't think it's a done deal that he's the guy. So I would like to see them continue to invest because the only way I think everybody can agree on this. The only way the Panthers move forward and kind of dig themselves out of this hole is if Bryce Young pans out to be a franchise quarterback. So I think that's the direction they should go in. And yeah, man, that's my thoughts on the Panthers. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.